Everyone is talking about the new Joker movie, and I want to pitch in my 2 cents real quick. And I find it fascinating. And a lot of people have already done reviews of the movie just based entirely off the trailers, which is, of course, ludicrous. Some have also done very, very deep psychological analysis of the character, again, based entirely on the trailers. Some have even tried to spoil the movie without even having watched the movie or without even having looked at the plot at all, just based entirely on the fact that it is somewhat inspired by the King of Comedy, and obviously there are some nods to that and hints to that in the trailer, or just by the fact that it has Robert De Niro in it, and well, you can see that it is inspired by it. The design is the set design is very similar, and some of the characters are obviously a nod to that movie. But that doesn't mean that it's gonna be the same movie. But some people obviously misunderstood that as it being the same movie, so they just assumed it's gonna have the same ending as the King of Comedy, and then went ahead and spoiled the Joker movie. They actually didn't spoil the Joker movie, they spoiled the ending to the King of Comedy without actually knowing if that's gonna be the same ending. It doesn't make any sense that it would have the same ending because it's an entirely different story, but it's just ludicrous. So I feel like before the movie is even released, the movie is toying with us, or Joker, if you will, is kind of toying with us and misleading us and giving us all those different misleading interpretations even before the movie even opens, which is of course in line with what the Joker does. He doesn't have one origin story. That's why there was never an origin story movie, not really, about the Joker, because he doesn't have one origin story. It's his, as has been stated in the animated movies and in the comics, his origin story is multiple choice. So, but the one thing that I'm sure they do copy from the King of Comedy is that ambiguity. I don't know about the specifics, and I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't want to spoil the King of Comedy for you, because that's a great movie as well. And in case they do have a same ending, I don't want to spoil the Joker movie for you. But sufficely to say, the ending of the King of Comedy is very ambiguous. And throughout the movie, I'm talking about the King of Comedy, we don't know what is real and what is not. Because the protagonist of the King of Comedy, played by Robert De Niro, is basically schizophrenic and has mental illusions. So he kind of plays the role of the unreliable narrator. Now, I don't think that that's gonna be the case in the Joker movie. At least it's not gonna be the case as much as it was the case in the King of Comedy, because otherwise it would just be, there would be no point in making the movie. It would just be a remake of the King of Comedy. And if that would have been the case, it wouldn't have gotten so much praise from the critics, because they would have realized, oh wait, this is just a rip-off of the King of Comedy. And it would have been super obvious anyway, because it also has Robert De Niro in it, and in a very similar role, or at least in a role that was played by Jerry Lewis in the original. So he kind of swapped roles. He plays in the Joker. He basically plays the role that was played by Jerry Lewis in the King of Comedy. So, but if it's just gonna be a complete ripoff of the King of Comedy, then it would just be way too obvious, and and I'm sure they wouldn't have gotten Robert De Niro in a similar role, so because it would just be a complete ripoff, and nobody would have liked the movie. The critics would have bashed the movie as the ripoff that it is. So I'm sure that's not going to be the case. It's not going to be a complete ripoff of the King of Comedy, and it's not going to have the same ending. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. I'm not, because obviously I haven't seen the movie, and I don't want to read those rumors about what the storyline might be about, and I don't want to spoil it, but I do want to focus on what's not gonna be the case. So, for one, I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be a complete ripoff of the King of Comedy. That wouldn't make sense. But I do think it will have some elements, and it might even have some scenes that are not to be taken at face value. And then, if that's the case, then the trailer is, of course, gonna be entirely misleading, because we don't know what images from the trailer are actually gonna happen in the movie, and what is maybe just the imagination of the protagonist. And speaking of misleading scenes in the trailer, just like they're obviously not gonna rip off the King of Comedy, they're also obviously not gonna rip off The Dark Knight. Because again, in the trailer, it kind of looks like they are ripping it off, at least a little bit, with the clown masks and stuff, and with Joker apparently instigating some riots, and apparently instigating those people in the clown mask, maybe having a similar scheme that the Joker had in The Dark Knight. Now, I don't think that's the case, and I think, again, this is the trailer intentionally misleading us, making us think it's gonna be like a previous movie, when it's obviously not gonna be exactly like that. Because, as a lot of people have pointed out, if you look closely at the scenes with the riots and the demonstrations, they have basically communist slogans and demands. And while the Joker is certainly evil and is a lot of things, I don't think he ever was a communist. So I think this is the trailer again misleading us, making us think that there would be a more direct connection between the Joker and the people in Joker masks and the riots and demonstrations. I'm sure he utilizes them in some manner, but if you look closely at the footage we see in the trailers, and a lot of people have also pointed that out, it doesn't seem like he seems to be directly involved in this. He runs in the other direction, and the police seem to ignore him. So there definitely seems to be some connection, I'm sure, but it's not as a direct connection as the trailer wants us to believe, and it's not the kind of connection, it's not the kind of scheme that the Joker used in the Dark Knight. So now that I talked about things that I'm pretty sure are not going to happen, like them ripping off those two previous movies, now let's talk about a few things that I'm sure are going to happen. I'm pretty sure the movie that is most... If there is one movie that is very similar to the upcoming Joker movie, then I think it's actually The Man Who Laughs. I'm sorry, my English is terrible. Besides, the original title is Der Mann, der lacht, with Conrad Veidt, very famous actor from like the golden age of Hollywood. He was in Casablanca, but before that he was in a lot of German expressionist silent movies. Probably most famously as Der Mann, der lacht, the man who laughs. And this is actually the character that inspired the Joker. So since this is also a kind of proto-Joker, so to say, I think he's gonna share a lot in common with that character. Because that character actually wasn't the villain. He looks menacing, and because he looks so menacing, he inspired the Joker. But he was actually he wasn't actually the villain in The Man Who Laughs. He wasn't the villain. He was more or less the good guy, but he was being tempted. There were evil people that were trying to corrupt him. But overall, he was the protagonist. He was the good guy, more or less, you know. But of course, there were corrupting elements, and I think the new Joker is gonna be a lot like that. So if there is one movie that you should watch if you wanna know what the Joker is gonna be about, then I think it's that movie. And of course, it's a silent movie. But do watch it because that movie is awesome. You're gonna be in for a treat. And of course, it's just like the upcoming Joker movie. It's a very deep character study. You know, it's not like your typical superhero action movie, and neither is the Joker gonna be like that. And I think that's a great thing. And if you like that sort of thing, then you're gonna enjoy The Man Who Laughs. It's an awesome silent movie. I can probably, you know what, I can actually upload it because the copyright has expired. But of course, if I upload it to YouTube, because precisely because the copyright has expired, it's terrible on YouTube. There's so many companies that try to cash in on that, and they give you copyright strikes for movies, for silent movies in the public domain that they don't even have the copyright for, just to make money. It's horrible. But maybe I can upload it to BitChute. So anyway, go check out that silent movie because it's awesome, and I do suspect it's gonna be a lot similar to the upcoming Joker movie. And of course, if that's the case, then the elements, and it will have some elements, yes, it will have some elements, obviously, from the King of Comedy. And then the elements taken from the King of Comedy make sense. And then you need at least some of those elements. They're not going to be as strong, and it's probably, it's not going to have the exact same ending. I won't talk about that ending because in case it does have a similar ending, I don't want to spoil it for you. But see, it's very obvious that just from the trailer, and I don't think they're faking that, it's very obvious that overall it's a likable character, he is the protagonist, and of course it's kind of like, maybe a little like Breaking Bad, that eventually he's gonna turn into the bad guy. But right now, or at least as the movie starts, maybe at the end of the movie he's gonna become the bad guy, obviously. Well, he probably is, yes. But it's only at the end of the movie that he's gonna be the bad guy. Before that, he's not gonna be the bad guy. He's gonna be a likable, relatable guy. And that creates a bit of a dilemma, because on the one hand, he's like the most evil villain there is, but on the other hand, he's gonna be this likable, relatable character, this good guy, and that creates a bit of a problem because it's difficult to be both. I mean, sure, it's gonna be a bit like in Breaking Bad. He slowly descends into madness and into being evil. He slowly descends into that, obviously. But still, overall, you kind of have to decide, is he gonna be the good guy, or is he not or is he gonna be the villain? It's difficult to be both at the same time in the same movie. So this is where the elements of the King of Comedy come in handy, because if you have an unreliable narrator, then he can be kind of both. And then the viewer can kind of decide, what he thinks is actually happening. And everyone can decide for himself if he wants to see the character as the good guy or as the villain. And it also ties into that whole concept of the Joker's origin story being multiple choice, and the Joker telling an unreliable origin story.